And then the moment you start getting uncomfortable and it gets that point, your wiring is going to scream at you with all the logic, all the intellect, all the rationale you need to stop moving forward.
Mm.
And it's not because you're stupid or unworthy or uneducated or wrong or any of it. It's just because that's your wiring. That's what you've got. But it can grow, it can expand, and we can eliminate some of that stuff that isn't serving you.
Hey everyone, welcome to the RLT podcast, where we share some real life tools, tips, and tricks to help you not only discover, but also reach your ultimate goals. What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to a brand new week and a brand new, very special episode of the Real Life Tips podcast. This is episode number 63, and I'm your host, Manu.
You joined by Leon as usual. I almost thought that you were going to give it away there, Manu. As Manu said, very, very special episode. Manu, how long have we been planning for a guest of this kind of esteem to be on our podcast, man?
For quite some time, and we've been hinting that a special episode is in the making and that it's coming up, and here it is.
Yeah, here it is. So I'm glad to have the honor and privilege of introducing Mr. Bob Doyle. He's on our show. If you have not heard of him, which I believe you would then be a resident under a rock, but he's a world-renowned author, CEO. He was featured, and this is, I think, the part that most people will recommend or remember. He was featured in the documentary and book of Law of Attraction, The Secret. This was one of those things that my mom introduced me to when I was still a little bit younger. And she told me so much about this, and she had me read the book. I wasn't allowed to watch the documentary and just kind of cop out. I had to actually read the book. So he's also a veteran broadcaster, music composer, ukulele fanatic, you name it. We've got him on the show today for you guys. I want to introduce you to Mr. Bob Doyle. Bob Doyle, how are you doing, sir?
Gentlemen, you are too flattering. I'm a very special episode. Wow. That's all I've ever wanted to be. I can drop the mic and walk right out.
I left out none of the accolades.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here.
Oh, it's such a pleasure to have you. You know, I think a lot of the people that recognizes your name will remember about the days of Law of Attraction. And since then, there's been a lot of talk, and I think we do a lot of shows and episodes around mindfulness and, you know, the brain chemicals and trying to kind of manipulate what your mind is doing and things like that. And I think this episode is going to be so complementary to that and the message that you send to your listeners and your people in your teachings and so on as well. So maybe as a start, just to kind of find a foundation on this, why the change from, let's say, Law of Attraction into more neuroplasticity and brain rewiring? What does that actually mean to the normal listener out there?
Well, first, the reason that I transitioned from teaching Law of Attraction after 20 years of doing it to neuroplasticity is because there's not nearly as much confusion about the fact that our brain can change. That's pretty much all you need to know, as compared to everything that you hear about the Law of Attraction with energy and vibration and resonance and resistance and all this stuff. And people became so fixated on the Law of Attraction and getting it right that they weren't paying any attention to what was most important, and that is, who do I need to be to get the results that I'm trying to attract? The Law of Attraction will take care of itself when we step into being that person. So what determines who we're being is our brain's wiring. And so when I kind of had that light bulb moment, I thought, well, instead of trying to get everybody to understand all this esoteric stuff, which I've been doing for 20 years, why don't we just say, hey, you know what? Your brain can change. Let's do the things necessary to change it the way you want. And since I started taking that approach, number one, it's a lot more fun to talk about because we don't have to wade through hours of Law of Attraction debate. And it's a lot easier for people to see and understand how they got to their starting point, why they have this autopilot wiring, and that they can change it. And that's what my work is about now. It's the reason I changed is because I'm about getting results with personal transformation. And the Law of Attraction, as excited and dedicated and committed to it as I was, and excited about teaching the science and getting everybody to get it, I just had to face the fact that there's just too much confusion and it's the long way. And understanding how it works,
that makes a lot of sense.
You need to understand how you work.
I think it's so interesting, Bob, because we hear so many great things. You know, you got to be more like this. You got to strive towards this, and this should be your end goal. And so we constantly compare ourselves to, number one, the goals of others, but we very hardly ever look at the process of how to accomplish that. And so I think that really resonates, is start looking inward and start looking at, who do you want to be, and start looking at how can you actually go about achieving that. So that makes perfect sense. I think one of the very interesting things that I've heard you say in the past as well is that we are unconsciously wired through our lifetimes. Could you maybe elaborate a little bit on what do you mean by unconsciously wired?
Yeah, of course. So when we're born, age 0 to 7, our brain is just wide open and ready to receive. And it just says yes to everything because we don't have the ability to discern or assess or evaluate anything. So our brain is going to grow and develop based on what's being input. And that's going to be our parents and those around us. So whatever beliefs they have, whatever they consider truth, it's going to be literally programmed into you. That will be your foundation. Now, once you do start to get conscious and start to evaluate things, a little more self-aware, all the decisions you make are going to be based on that initial foundation. Okay, so whatever you think is possible for yourself, what you deserve, what's going to be hard, what's going to be easy, what's for somebody else, all of that is in this underlying basic wiring that you've got a foundation. But people don't think about that. They just see, this is the truth. This is how it is. And so I'm going to do the best I can given that this is the truth. But it's not the truth. It's their truth based on how they were wired totally unconsciously. So, and we continue, if we do not understand how our brain works in its most basic form, we're going to continue to be programmed unconsciously because we're not evaluating what's coming in. We're accepting certain things as truth without any evaluation, especially if we compare it to our initial wiring and it checks out. Then it just becomes another layer of that truth, a truth that can limit us in completely, horrible ways.
And what's so fascinating to me is that, so you fully believe in the fact that we can rewire our brains. And I want to agree with you on that as well. But I do want to ask that in a question, though, is have we been able to do that through our lifetime as well, seeing as that, to sort of break out of that bias? Because I feel like a lot of the things that you've mentioned do play a key role in maybe the unconscious. But is there a way that we have shown in the past that we can break out of that, and how can we trigger that rewiring? Just before we get into the meat of understanding that, I want to just build a solid foundation of understanding now that we know what the unconscious wired, what that actually means, and how can we break out of that, and have we done that in the past?
Well, we just have to, yes, of course we've done it in the past. If you look back at who you were 5 years ago, 10 years ago, you're going to see that there's some definite personality traits. You've evolved, things have happened, your wiring has changed, and you might look back and say, how did I ever think that way, or whatever? Or let's put it this way, when you were born, of course, you didn't have any knowledge of how to walk or talk or any of that. You got wired for that. That wiring changed. And older, maybe you decided to learn a second language. So you took that on and you rehearsed and you practiced and studied and did repetition and consistency. This is how we learn everything, not just Spanish, but how we do our life. The reason we're wired the way that we are, and it seems so true, is because we just kept having the same conversations running in our head without argument, year after year, moment after moment, all the time. So it's very strong wiring. But our brain is ready to learn anything if we introduce it new things, and if we're committed to the end goal, and we take we are consistent and we are willing to take the journey. Like when we learn a new language, we make a lot of mistakes. When we learn to walk, we fall down a lot, but we don't quit because the end goal is non-negotiable. If we can make our goal to become this incredible version of ourselves and all that will imply non-negotiable, then we will do it because we understand that the ups and the downs, they're all part of it. That 5 steps back feeling is most definitely a step forward if you learn from that 5 steps back, make an adjustment and keep going, just like you learn anything. There's not a part of your brain that says, this is how you learn to be your person. It just learns and it remembers because of the neural pathways. So just keep feeding them new things. And if you stop giving thoughts your attention over time, those neural pathways wither and they're not as activated as on such autopilot. The new, stronger ones are. And that's how you create a whole new autopilot. But it takes the same thing that it takes to learn anything, and that is repetition and consistency, and being willing to give up the old stories that you tell that keep triggering that old wiring.
That's very interesting. That actually wants to, kind of brings me into the next point as well. And so what you're basically saying is that by unconscious wiring, it's almost like there was not really a choice in the matter. It's just the way that life went, and everyone gets onto the same roller coaster, and you see your bystanders doing the same. So you're kind of just following this natural path or the system that we call life. And what you're saying is that, and we try and advocate for that in our episodes quite a bit, but this is a revolutionary concept for us, is that you can literally take ownership of the wiring in your brain and start the process of rewiring away from the natural wiring and the unconscious wiring that was put in place by systems, by government, by schools, by teaching through your parents and their old archaic, let's say, methods, etc.
Yes.
So with that concept in mind, because I think that is really what our listeners is after, and our listeners are very much step orientated. I think that's always how it's very, very easy to remember stuff. Can you give us a glimmer of where does one start with this? How do you even recognize and bring your unconscious to the conscious? So the wiring that's just automatically happening all day long, how do you bring that to the front and start remapping your brain?
Yes.
What are the steps? What can we do?
Well, so some people do know what their self-sabotaging behavior is, and they just haven't figured out how to stop doing it. But those same people and other people will be completely blind to what they're doing on autopilot, because as I said before, it's just their truth. They're not thinking about that it's behavior or anything. It just is. So if you're going to change it, though, you have to recognize that it is autopilot behavior. So what I do with people is I give them a quiz. I have a quiz that they take. It takes them 60 seconds. And at the end of that quiz, they have identified what I call a transformation personality type. That is a personality type related to taking on personal transformation. There's certain behaviors that show up when people take on personal transformation that tend to stop them. And when you can identify yourself as one of these types and see those traits within you, then as you're going through the course of your day, you're more aware. Okay. You see them then. And there's more to it than that. Of course, we give you what we do is that's one thing. That's the first step to recognize it. But now what are you going to do? It's about replacing it, as I alluded to before. You want to replace the autopilot thought process that goes down all these roads and connects all these dots and makes all this meaning and triggers off all this chemistry with something else that feels better, that's more empowering. So what is that? Well, that's when you get to use your brain the way it was intended to create. It is a creation. And our imagination is an amazing gift, and it's not there by accident. And yes, in the law of attraction conversation, there's a lot of talk about visualization, but it's kind of related to the energy of it and all of it's going to bring it all in. But when we visualize being something, doing something, whatever, our brain doesn't really know that it's not actually happening. You've heard this a million different times, I'm sure. And you also probably have heard about athletes and such, musicians that can rehearse their craft in their mind. And and then when they get on the course or they get at the piano keyboard, it's like they've been practicing. And we can do the exact same thing with our behavior. So at the beginning of each day, now that a person understands what triggers them, they can look at the day ahead and say, okay, well, this is what's ahead of me. And I'm looking at this situation, which generally I respond to this way, that is disempowering and always gets me not where I want to go. How would I rather be in this situation? And you just get to make it up and make it up and make it up and make it up. It's absolutely free. No one's judging. No one's watching. You just get to run it till it feels good. And then when you get it tuned in, you just keep rehearsing and rehearsing and rehearsing. Now, when you're out in the real world and the trigger happens, there it is. There's your moment. You're like, okay, because you've been taught to become aware of it. You're going to say, okay, I'm going into autopilot, but I have rehearsed this other way dozens and dozens of times. I'm now going to do this. I'm going to be this out in the world, not in my head, not on a vision board. I'm going to put this out there. And when you do that, not only does that strengthen that whole biological process, because now you physicalize this, but the world has to respond different because you've given it different input to respond to. So it's taking it from the inside and all this, visualizing. That's the first step now. But that visualizing is there to create a brain that will take the action.
It makes so much sense, because we've all heard of the term fake it till you make it, and it's funny, but it's so true. And it's happened where that has actually gotten you out of old routines, old habits. So many different situations in my own personal life as well, where if you act the part, you eventually become the part. And so I think that is the key there, is to not get so fixated on the actions, the milestones laying ahead for you to make that change, make that shift in mindset, and manifest something in your life, and actually start off one step at a time. As you mentioned, start off internally, and then start practicing that mentally, and then start bringing that into the physical world. I think it's so important that you mentioned to break free from this type of autopilot, or manifesting an autopilot as well, because we all are influenced by so many different things. Life always hits us with a curveball, and we kind of just have to be reactive to that. But as opposed to that, we, on the other end of the fence, we keep coming home after our day jobs, sitting there wondering, why am I not accomplishing the things that I want to accomplish? And I think that is why it is super, super important, and why I'm so, so happy that we have you on the show here, because talking about rewiring and neuroplasticity it's astounding to me, because what that really means is that you can finally take control. And if you know anything about me, you listeners, Leon, you know me extremely well as well, is that I'm a control freak. So to me, that is extremely appealing. I think one of the most interesting things as well out of that is just how you can finally take control of your own destiny, not by building it up in your mind, but actually starting one step at a time, getting the formula down, following the process. And it all starts off at the foundational level of
I like that
self-assessment.
But my whole thing here is to really simplify this process. If we are inspired by somebody out in the world, which generally is what kind of wakes us up to, hey, I want to be something bigger. They see something out in the world that inspires them. And if they see somebody like that, and it's like, well, what are they doing that's inspiring? What are they doing that I would love to do, but I don't know how to do? Now, a lot of times when people say, I don't know how to do that, that's the end of it. Like as if these people were born with the knowledge, as if they didn't have to do any learning or take any journey. They just have this, and wow, how lucky to be them. And then you hear their story, and it's a story you probably don't want to relive, or whatever. People earn their way there. So if you want to be like someone, you look at what they do. You don't have to imitate everything, but you look at what they do and you say, okay, what behavior are they exhibiting that I'm not, that is important for them to be able to maintain that life that they're doing? And what of that behavior could I take on right now that doesn't depend on me getting any particular goal or amount of money or being in the right place at the right time? What can I be? Who can I be today that I'm not being, that is more in alignment with who I'm aspiring to be? People wait so long to take that action of just trying on being a different person, but our brain is ready to do it at any time.
100%. And I think what's so inspiring about your story is that, I mean, back in 2002, you were, let's say, for the lack of a better explanation, a desk jockey like most of us. You worked the 9 to 5, you earned a good living, and it wasn't that the money was the problem. I would say, just assuming from what I read, you just felt unfulfilled, right? And that's the whole point of this rewiring exercise, is to find your true meaning in life and your purpose. Am I right?
Or to decide what your purpose. Here's the thing. 20 years in the law of attraction conversation, I ran into a lot of people who are looking for who they're supposed to be or their purpose. And I'm like, stop looking. Decide. You get to decide. You've got the seed within you. You've got this passion. You've got this interest. There's a million different ways you could pursue it. A million different ways. But who do you want to be? And just start being that person now and start the journey. You're going to learn some things. You're going to make some mistakes. It may not get there as fast as you want, but you start the journey today.
Yeah, it's true.
Because there's no other way to get there.
I think a lot of people out there, I think the only question in everyone's mind listening to this is, how do you deal with the fear of the unknown? A lot of people that hear our podcast and listen to our podcast, myself included sometimes, we come on here, we preach really good concepts, and then we don't necessarily even fulfill many of those ourselves because of the fear of the unknown. How does one... Is it the innate ability to understand that if I pursue what I'm truly meant to do, that it will just automatically have to be successful? How do you overcome the fear of taking that step and changing the complete status quo of your life into what you believe you should be doing, but that could render you, let's say, out of pocket or jobless for a period of time. How do you deal with those issues?
Well, there's a lot there to unpack there. So, but the fear of the unknown, I mean, look, everything's unknown. We don't know what's going to happen 5 minutes from now. You think you do, but you don't know.
True.
And so, like, you just need to let go of that. It's a journey. Remember, of course, we're going to take action. We have a goal, a vision that is drawing us through the journey of life. Because here's the news flash. It's not about the destination, because before you even get there, that's going to evolve. That is this liquidy, superfluous, evolving thing, unless you attach to it, which is the terrible thing to do, because you're going to miss all sorts of opportunities to grow.
So true.
But that initial calling, that initial vision is there to pull you through the journey of life, the ups, the downs, the adventures, the heartbreaks, the joys, the elations, the whole human experience. We're here to have it all. And we should welcome the whole thing, but we have to be careful about what we're telling ourselves about the things that happen and the meaning that we give things. If 5 bad, quote unquote, bad things happen to us in a row, it would be easy for a lot of people to make it mean a bunch of stuff that's negative and have them stop. Yeah. But you can also reframe all of those things, find the lesson in it, make an adjustment, and keep going. It is about commitment. It's about commitment because you have to make it non-negotiable. I keep saying that over and over again. Why must you do this? Because if it's the least bit wishy-washy, all of your old wiring is going to kick in and talk you out of it very rationally, and you'll have all the evidence and proof you need. You have to move past that. That's the discomfort of growth that people resist. They get a certain part in their journey, and then they get really uncomfortable, which is the moment of truth.
That's true.
That's where you want to be. But they don't see it that way. They go, it's too hard. I got to get out of here. And then they retreat or just stay there or whatever.
That's so true. Yeah, I think one things that you mentioned there as well that stood out to me is, the negative self-talk. And I think sometimes we find ourselves in this spiral of, as you mentioned, one thing goes wrong, second thing goes wrong, third. By the fifth thing, you all of a sudden start seeing yourself as this failure, as this complete and utter failure.
Yes.
You can't accomplish anything. And I think that snowballs. To me, it's so interesting knowing that there is a way that we can rewire that, and it really simply starts with a decision. It doesn't start with you waiting for the perfect circumstances, waiting for the money to come in, waiting for your ship to come in. It starts with you. It starts with you making that decision and saying, you know what, I'm sick and tired of the life that I've been living for the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years, going into this or snowball effect of negative self-talk, and it's just not bringing me closer to my goals, and saying, today I'm going to sit down, I'm really going to take some time for myself, I'm going to decide first and foremost, what is it that I do want? Who do I want to be? What do I want to be? What do I want to accomplish as well? And it starts with then practicing that internally and then starting to bring that out to the physical world. Absolutely astonishing. I love that. I love the concept. And I think just before we wrap up the show, as we always do, we'll have to move into the most crucial part of this episode, which, Leon, I think you're just as excited as I am. But this is where we switch over to the real life
dubs. How do you like my beatboxing, Mr. Bob Doyle?
I want to sample it, and I want to put it in a keyboard and play it over and over. I'm going to make it my ringtone.
I think that would be a mistake, sir.
I think it's the second time ever Leon's done that live on a session with a guest on here as well. So it was the pressure on.
It truly is.
Yeah. I got stage fright.
Truly
and
very special
I'm sitting solo here, and I still got stage fright.
Yeah, I've given him enough time to practice before we brought you on the show. Bob, absolutely insightful content that you've shared with us and with our listeners today. With all of that being said, the most crucial part is how can we go about applying this to our lives, and how can we start today? Now, I know that in the beginning or somewhere in the episode, you mentioned something about a quiz. You briefly scraped the surface on that. And you mentioned that is where we start. Is that, in fact, the very first point, or how exactly do we start applying this to our daily lives?
Give us a shortcut.
Step one, take the quiz. Yes, step one, take the quiz, because then you have something to work with. You have something, and you're going to find more things as you get good at this, as you become more self-aware, but you're going to have some things that you can start to notice in your day and start to change. Again, this is a process. All my students, they journal, they got to kind of they're developing this. We're We're crafting the future you. This is fun. This is exciting. It's the most important work you can do in your life. And it takes some time because we're gonna start at our, probably start thinking way too small. And then as we get more comfortable with things, we'll expand our sort of comfort zone there and work on things. But the first thing you have to do is understand, where am I on autopilot in a way that is stopping me from moving forward? Because there's autopilot that may serve you too. We're talking about the stuff that doesn't. So then that's the very first step. And then it's deciding, what are you going to replace it with? But to be clear on that takes the process of identifying, well, who do I really want to be? Or at least what's a starting point? It doesn't have to be the end all be all. But if there's certain aspects of your personality or who you're being that you want to up level, you can start there. And then as you do that, you'll get more and more clarity. You'll understand that it's working. You'll get more and more bold. Just like practicing anything else, the more you do it, the more comfortable you get. But here is the caveat. And this is just the personal development industry as a whole has a abysmal success rate. And wiring is the reason why, because the programs and the books and the teachers, they can all be fan-flippantastic. But if you're doing this on your own, no matter how smart you are, no matter how evolved you are or spiritual you are, at some point, if you're about growth, you're going to hit the limits of your wiring. That's why you're taking the course or reading the book. You want to grow. That means you're going to hit that level. If you don't have the resources to see things in a different way, to choose different ways of making meaning, then of course you're going to stick there or go back or find another program or another author or whatever. You got to find somebody, whether it's a coach or a community or just somebody who can say, hey man, I can look at that 12 million different ways for you. That's going to be critical. I promise anybody listening to this saying, I'm going to just try this on my own. I get what he said. I got this. And then the moment you start getting uncomfortable and it gets that point, your wiring is going to scream at you with all the logic, all the intellect, all the rationale you need to stop moving forward. And it's not because you're stupid or unworthy or uneducated or wrong or any of it. It's just because that's your wiring. That's what you've got. But it can grow, it can expand, and we can eliminate some of that stuff that isn't serving you.
That's excellent. I really love the concept of let's almost call it like perpetual growth and practicing of small steps and moving that into bigger steps. It's almost like sports, you don't start off as a professional soccer player. Those dudes have to whack a ball around for many, many years. And I guess it's through keeping on challenging themselves. And I guess what you're saying also is that every now and again, even on this journey of challenging yourself and finding better meaning and increasing your challenges that you give yourself, you are going to need those breakthrough moments where you're going to have to rely on a network of friends or people or community or programs or mentorship or something that's going to help you, further the ball downfield. And I do think that's the hack to it, right? It shouldn't be, I think a lot of people listen to this or look at the title and see rewiring as the end goal. But it's the work in between that makes it achievable. It's the fact that you can start with small things, gain momentum, practice it in private, and then test a couple of samples against some people in your direct field of view, and then move the goalposts further and go for a bigger challenge. That I think is, for me, what's been extremely insightful about this episode, maybe something I didn't realize.
Yes. Just let your life be the lab. You can't figure it all out without going out there and doing some experimentation and getting some results of your experiments. I mean, and look, the people who are out there making stuff happen, that's what they do. They are unapologetic. They go out, they make bold, big, huge errors. And then they make fixes, and then we have an iPhone. It's like that's how it works. You got to keep going. You got to keep going in the face of everything, all the naysayers, all the people who don't understand why you're doing it, all the self-doubt you have. If you can lock in and go, nope, I must do this, and here's why, and you're clear on that, then it's just a matter of staying the course.
And if you can, approach someone who can look at it from a different perspective. I mean, we all from time to time feel the need, or actually have the need, to consult with someone else, someone who is completely removed from our situations with our day-to-day, and to look at it from a different angle as well. I think that is just crucial.
Yeah, it is.
Bob, it's been absolutely insightful. I'm so excited that we finally got to do this. after so many months of trying to sync up our calendars and time zones and everything. So it's been an absolute pleasure.
Right.
Just before we let you go, I know that you mentioned this quiz. Where exactly can people go and find this quiz so that I can link it out in the show notes for them as well? And what have you been working on more recently that you're focusing on, that you're spending most of your time on, that you think our listeners would benefit from?
Okay. So to get to the quiz is tptquiz.com for transformation personality type quiz.com. Okay. So tptquiz.com. And then you'll get your type, you'll get some results, a video, a PDF, and you'll learn about how I work with folks.
And I understand that that's about 60 seconds just to take the quiz, and it's absolutely free.
It's thank you for clarifying. Yes, the quiz is free. It takes about 60 seconds. It's multiple choice. It's super fast, and from what I hear, pretty stinking accurate. So give that a try, and then you'll have some first steps there. And really, what I'm working on now is, I'm always developing the program. The work I do is around a program called Evolve Your Excellence. So I'm always working on that and making that better. But the thing I'm really super excited about is the metaverse. I've been a virtual reality geek for a really long time.
Nice.
And now we're finally getting to the point where a lot more people have VR headsets and things like that. And so more people are looking at the metaverse and its potential than, there were, let's say, a year or two ago. And so we're just trying to be out there on the cutting edge and the forefront and saying, hey, look, we can do trainings in here and you can hold a 3D human brain. It's like, there's all kinds of stuff we can do in the metaverse that we can't do in real life. And of course, I anything that eliminates me having to travel that much is awesome. So
I feel like that calls for another episode, man.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'm so intrigued. We're definitely going to be looking out for what you're going to be doing in that space as well. And we'll definitely start following that track with you. And we might bring you back on the show for another episode just so that we can talk about that, because I feel that there's so much that we can talk about. We're tech fanatics as well, Leon and myself.
Yep.
We work in the IT industry. We have been for, pretty much our whole career as well. So it's absolutely fascinating to know that you're approaching that as well. That's really, really awesome.
Oh, yeah. I've been waiting for this time when people are starting to at least look at it.
Yeah, the time is now for that.
Yeah, there's so much to adjust to and so much to get used to. But ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. Everything that you need to know from pretty much the expert of neuroplasticity and brain rewiring, the person who has been preaching this for such a long time, who has spent so much time on preaching the gospel of law of attraction and helping people really grasp the concept of adapting and really just focusing and honing in on who they are and who they can be so that they can achieve their ultimate best. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show, Bob. Thank you so much. We can't wait to get you back here again. But that is it. That's all we have time for this week. With that being said, this is me signing off, Mono.
You were joined by Leon as usual. Bob, go well. It's been such a pleasure. We can't wait to have you on the show again. Thank you.
What's up, guys and girls? If you've derived some great value from our show thus far, please take a second to rate and review us on the platform that you're tuned in on. This will really help us to grow the show and reach more and more people, to spread the positivity and change more and more lives. So it will literally just take you a second to rate and review us, and who knows, perhaps you could directly be responsible for changing someone's life today. We look forward to seeing you guys in the next one. Until then, cheers.